this is Steve with Smitty's Flybox. This month we're going to tie a Prince Nymph, but we're going to tie it jig style, Euro style with a tungsten bead on a Orienson jig hook. So it's nice and heavy. Works great on your Euro nymphing rod or as a dropper suspended under a dry. And something about a Prince Nymph that just catches fish, so this should be a good one. So what I've done is I've just seated that slotted tungsten bead and wrapped a little bit of lead wire and jammed up against that bead to help keep that in place. And now I'm just going to wrap a bunch of thread wraps through all that lead wire just to secure everything, keep it from slipping around. And it's a good idea to also hit that with a little super glue or head cement like that. Okay, first thing we're going to do is tie in goose buyouts for the tail. So I'm going to take 2 of these, snip 2 of these off, and then we'll lay these back to back. That way they'll fork out like that to give us that forked look. We want the tail to be about half the length of the hook shank, so once I have that measurement, I'll pinch it right there, and then you can actually split the hook like that and tie those in. Just trying to position those right on top. And let's tie those down all the way around to the end of the hook shank. Then they should fork out there nice and neat like that. And there's our tail. Let's make a few wraps and just tie down those butts. All right, now I'm going to tie in my ribbing. So I have some Mylar flash, gold on one side, silver on the other. Really doesn't matter, just personal preference. I'm going to tie it in so the silver is facing me. That way when I begin wrapping it, the gold will show through. So let's just tie that down. And then we'll take our thread up towards the bead, and that's where we can tie in our peacock. So, all right, so peacock curl. I'm going to use 2 strands. Depending on how bushy you want the fly, you can use 3. But I think these 2 are going to be just fine. And I'm going to lay those in just behind the bead and hold them together as I tie them down all the way back to our base of our tail. And then let's turn right around and come right back to the bead. So again, I'm just building a nice even underbody, a nice taper. And then I can just begin wrapping this peacock over the top away from me. These are pretty bushy. Okay, once I'm there to the bead, I can hold that straight up in the air with my right hand, and we'll tie that down 3 or 4 good times like that. Okay, now one thing with peacock is it is brittle, and it can break pretty easily on a couple fish. So I'm just going to take my thread and just spiral wrap through that peacock. And if you notice, it doesn't really mat it down too bad, but it does make it more durable. So now we can begin wrapping our flash, and we'll rib that through that peacock, trying to make nice even wraps as I work my way forward. And we'll tie that down right there behind the bead as well. Now we're going to put on a little whiting hackle. So I just have some regular old strung hackle. And let's prepare that. Snip a little bit of those barbs back, and then I can lay that in there and tie that in. There's actually a little space right behind that bead that I can run that stem down in and then just tie it in. And all I'm going to do is make about 1.5 turns. Right there up against the bead, like so. And we'll carefully tie that down. Try not to trap too many of those hackle fibers as we secure that in. Got a few strays up there, so let's just pull everything back and make a few more turns. That also helps us angle that hackle back just slightly more nymph style and less dry fly style. All right, we're ready now for the white goose biots. So I'm going to snip off a pair of those, just like we did with the brown, but I'm not going to put those back to back. Let's just try to even those tips up. I'm going to tie those so they're angled down, just like that. All right, let's flip this over since we are doing the jig style. And I want those tips to extend just past the bend of the hook, like that. And you can do this one at a time if it's a struggle to keep a hold of those white ones. But let's just try to capture those together. And we'll tie those down with 2 or 3 good turns. And then should lay out there nice and forked, like so. Now what you can do is just push those butts forward and then come in here and snip those off, like so. All right, let's just build a little collar right there. So I'm just going to pull everything back. Okay, now we're ready to do a little whip finish. And we'll hit that with some super glue. And what we've got is a nice little Prince Nymph jig that we can bounce along the bottom. It's got a lot of weight to it, and should be a good fly for you.